How safe is drinking water in South Africa? Well, the findings of the latest Blue Drop report are pretty alarming. Nearly a quarter of municipalities were found to be at critical risk. Some were also given red notices, meaning that they'll have to warn the public to boil water before drinking. Let's unpack this with Leonardo Manis. He is the Acting Deputy Director General of Regulation, Compliance and Enforcement at the Department of Water and Sanitation. Leonardo, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. This is what's worrying me. Nearly a quarter of municipalities found to be at critical risk. Why is that so?
Yes, good evening, Sean. We need to keep in mind as well, in terms of the Blue Drop Progress Report that we've actually released recently, we focused a lot in terms of information. So there are various components of the drinking water quality management domain that were subjected to this audit, or rather this assessment at this point in time. And the biggest issue that has actually amounted to or counted to the fact that we have high risk categorization of these systems would be for the lack of information. And that would mean that if you don't know in terms of the drinking water quality that you are serving in, and in terms of the business that you are doing, that surely amounts to high risk. And that is the 34% of systems that have been categorized or in this category would actually be due to that situation where there's not enough information to make a credible judgment in terms of what is happening. So the department is not moving from a perspective where it would simply take one sample and make a complete judgment on drinking water quality in that regard, because it certainly wants to restore the credibility as well as the trust of the public in drinking water, and therefore more information is required. The department certainly also will use this opportunity in time, Shahan, to ensure that we prepare municipalities for a bigger audit that will follow and a more complete report that will follow in terms of drinking water quality in the country.
Yeah. So what can you do in areas that actually have red notices, for instance, where residents need to be informed that they need to boil the water? I know when it comes to testing, you say that it needs to be more widespread, but with areas that are actually flagged as red notice areas, is there any plan to actually make sure that this changes so that you don't no longer have to boil water before you drink it in those specific areas?
Yes, surely. I think that the first point is that we just want to make it quite clear that the department commends municipalities that actually issues these alerts to their community, or concerned communities or affected communities, because that is part of the business that we want to have, where community actually know that in this area, like what recently has happened in Nelson Mandela Bay, where the Metro have issued that notice to the communities to say there's something wrong, be alert, be aware. And that is what we commend, but that is not where it should stop. The department also moved together with other stakeholders to ensure that the municipalities have the necessary resources in place to ensure that the water treatment works, and together with all other management systems that need to be put in place to ensure a more continuum of the risk management that has to happen in that area is in fact happening. And the other issue that we are working very hard at this point in time is also to restore the integrated regulatory information system back to its former glory, where the public can have access any time of the day to understand what is the quality of water in the area that they are residing in. So we will have that up and running within the next 6 months so that there can be a higher level of confidence in the public as far as where they find themselves to be.
I mean, you and I know that access to clean drinking water is a basic human right in this country. So what would you say to residents who have to go out of their way to, one, even get clean water, and then two, if they have water coming out of their taps, they have to actually boil it to make sure they don't get sick from it? Because this seems to be a problem in several municipalities that is ongoing. Hammanskraal is one. And we know that the water plant there, the water treatment plant, has been an issue for a while. So what do you say to these residents?
Well, in the first place is that we have to accept that this is something that needs to be very much worked upon, because we cannot rest until such time when we have although our water complying with the South African national standard, which is a great standard, it complies completely very well with international standards, even the guidelines set by the World Health Organization. People don't only deserve water that complies with such quality. People need water that complies with such quality, because it's not only a basic human right. It's a fact is that is what we require to actually live by. It is not going to be an alternative to get people to drink bottled water, because the majority of this country, it is not a viable option to turn to bottled water or any other devices that could actually treat water at domestic level. Water that comes from the tap should be safe to drink, and that is what the department as regulator will move to work towards, to get municipalities, water service authorities, and other institutions that take responsibility in this regard to account, to bring it to the point where it will comply with that standard that is set for all of our population.
So the Blue Drop report is revealing that there's an alarming decline in the quality of water and management processes, right, in several rural districts. Why have we reached this point where we're seeing a decline, and is it because of poor maintenance work at water treatment plants?
Well, there's an array or bouquet of reasons that can actually be accounted to. The one would be the fact is that operations and maintenance of our systems as it is currently in the place might not be as it's supposed to be. Another element of the business could also be the fact is that our investments that we make in the infrastructure that we have, even in our own people that take responsibility for the operations and the management of these systems, needs certainly to be jacked up. But as I said in the beginning of the interview, Sean, that the one thing that we need to keep in mind is that as those who take responsibility for this water treatment business need to go back to the drawing board and take responsibility of ensuring that we measure and we monitor and we react to the information that we receive, because the department's report speaks a lot in terms of the fact that there are areas where there's no information and where we simply operate without taking cognizance in terms of the quality and the processes that is underway. And that's the reason why we have to get people to, the responsible authorities to take cognizance of the importance of measurement and monitoring again.
I want to ask you whether this is a failure by the Water and Sanitation Department over the years to actually get right. Were the proper checks and balances not put in place? Many would argue that the former Water Minister, Nomvula Mokonyane, left this department in a state of mess and financial trouble. So I know you keep saying we need to work, but ultimately someone or some people fail to do their jobs to ensure that all South Africans have access to clean water from their taps. And who's going to be held accountable?
In fact, in terms of the responsibility from the department I'm speaking of, is that we had a regulatory role, and we didn't continue through with the Blue Drop progress that we've made since 2009 when we commenced with it. If you recall that in 2005 we had outbreaks of diarrhea in towns of Jalmas, and again in 2007 we also in the area of Ukuslamba and areas across the country where there were diarrheal outbreaks, which is your first indicator that drinking water widespreadly had actually gone into decline. So unfortunately, the pause in the Blue Drop program or the incentive-based regulation program has taken us backwards, but I think we have revived it since last year, and the Green Drop report was released.
Why was it cancelled?
Just repeat.
Why was the Blue Drop report cancelled?
It wasn't cancelled. It was the report wasn't cancelled, but the program was put on pause.
Why?
I cannot give you the reasons in terms of why it was, because I was not in that area in that stage in time. But in fact, is that what was perhaps the biggest decline in process there would have been the fact that the report wasn't published, even though behind the scenes the work continued. The fact that the report wasn't published actually brought down a little bit of the momentum that was, or not a little bit, we brought down the momentum that was gained over that period.
And who was the minister when it was put on hold?
I can't now recall, but it was in 2015. 2014 was the last report that was issued.
Okay, I'm going to Google that and have a look about who the minister was. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Leonardo Manis from the Department of Water and Sanitation.